From script to screen, every film is brought to life by visionary creatives and executives, all sharing one mission: to captivate the audience. Hosted by award-winning movie strategist Kevin Goetz, our podcast, Don't Kill the Messenger, offers a filmmaking masterclass through intimate conversations with Hollywood's most influential voices. And now, your host, Kevin Goetz.
Few producers can say they've helped launch a film that changed Hollywood overnight. My guest today, Stacey Sher, is one of those people. As an executive producer on Pulp Fiction, she helped bring it to the screen and prove that independent films could stand toe-to-toe with studio blockbusters. Since then, she's built a career defined by fearless choices, eclectic storytelling, and a rare ability to bridge the worlds of indie passion projects and mainstream hits. As a partner in Jersey Films with Danny DeVito and Michael Schomburg, and through her longtime collaborations with Quentin Tarantino and Steven Soderbergh, she has cemented her place as one of Hollywood's most influential producers, shaping the cultural conversation while also finding commercial success. Stacey, I cannot tell you how excited I am to have you here today.
I always love seeing you, Kevin.
Stacey, let's just cut to the chase. We found out we have a very fun connection. I grew up in East Brunswick, New Jersey, and on our block, one of my best friends growing up was called Mark Londa, and his father was Ivan Londa. And then Ivan Londa
married my Aunt Carol. So after Ivan's wife passed away and after my uncle, who's
Marilyn, let's say her name was Marilyn.
I didn't know her.
She was lovely and wonderful, and she was also like family. When Marilyn passed away,
and my uncle Michael passed away, my Aunt Carol met Ivan, and they've been happily married for years now.
Isn't that crazy? I'm looking at our engineer, Gary, who's going, wow. So here's the thing. How did we learn that? And now I'm thinking, because I got in touch with Ivan and I met him and he introduced me to Carol. I think they came out here. And one of the first things she said is, my niece is in the movie business. And I'm like, okay, I'm never going to know who the hell this person is. And she says, it's Stacey Sher. And I'm like, you are kidding me.
I think they were out here for my mom's 80th birthday party.
Is your mom still with us?
Yes.
All right.
And Carol and Ivan were here. And my cousin, Tracy, was here.
What's your mom's name?
Jessica Sher. She always gets short shrift, so we don't want to give it to her. She always gets short shrift and is blamed as the person who didn't wait for me to see Jaws when I went off to summer camp and saw it without me the day I left.
Ooh.
It was a long-time feud that was finally overcome when we all went as a family to see it at the Hollywood Bowl when it was conducted live. So the Jaws beef was buried.
John Williams did that. I heard him conduct. It's unbelievable.
It was amazing. We all got socks.
People come with their lightsabers and all sorts of weird. I mean, it's incredible.
The Hollywood Bowl film series are incredible.
Incredible. Okay. We've seen each other at a few previews.
Yes, we have.
I mean, we really do go back like almost 3 decades. I want to say the first screening we did was at Pulp Fiction. He actually tested the movie. I remember being in Portland, Oregon. Do you remember that, Stacey?
You know, I feel like the movie was already locked. It was tested when it had already won the Palme d'Or. So none of those screenings on the QT movies were ever done. And I'm sure you even remember on that. It was
as diagnostic exercises.
Yeah, they were more marketing
ones.
exercises. Mm-hmm. And of course, I'm sure you remember that he introduced that screening.
I remember it.
And continues to do that on every one. So it was, you know, how many of you saw Reservoir Dogs? How many of you saw Natural Born Killers? How many of you saw True Romance? How many of you saw Remains of the Day? Get the fuck out of here. Because Remains of the Day came out around that time. And of course, Tony Scott had directed True Romance, and
Wasn't
Oliver
that
Stone
incredible?
had directed Natural Born Killers.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think he was really looking for people who understood the kinds of movies that he was trying to make.
When did you see the originality of Quentin's work? How did you get that? Pick up on that?
My first boss, Linda Obst, one of the
things... Hold on, we got to stop for a call out. My girl... And Deborah Hill, right?
Deborah Hill was one of the great humans of all time.
Just fantastic.
Yeah,
and what a terrible end.
Yeah,
that was.
Yeah.
Way too early.
Way too early. We had her after she had her surgery because she had to have both her legs amputated. And then ultimately she succumbed to the cancer. It had spread because she was the greatest spirit in the world. We had her 54th birthday party at my house, and she wanted Studio 54, and it was a disco party. And because she liked to run everything, she dictated what the menu would be at my house, exactly what we would have and everything about it.
Did you work on Adventures in Babysitting?
That was the movie that I got my job through.
Because I screened that movie. We tested it in Burbank. Do you remember that?
Of course, it's by the Best Buy.
Exactly.
I remember everything about that. And we also tested Reality Bites there.
Ben.
Yeah, which I also produced. So
you're amazing. I got to say, when I went through my notes to prepare for this interview, I could not believe, Stacey, the commonalities that we shared, the number of movies I had worked on, but just how prolific you are. The fact that you have just exceptional taste.
Well, thank you.
No, I mean it from the bottom of my heart. You have this insane ability to find great material. How do you do it?
I would say that it is the 10,000 hours, but it's a taste thing. I loved movies. It was my dad and my common ground. We really had a slightly tricky relationship. I considered him my father, but he was my stepfather. He and my mom got married when I was 6, and I was...
You called him dad?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What happened to your birth dad?
He was just a shitty father.
So he was alive?
He was alive. I just didn't
alive?
see him. No, he had just passed away a couple of years ago.
What was your father who raised you's name?
Stacey Sher. And he's in Pulp Fiction.
Oh, no, he's not.
Yeah, he was a big movie buff. Quentin loved my dad. Everyone loved my dad. And he is the boxing coach who gives Bruce Willis, he wakes him up from the Gold Watch speech and says, "It's time, Butch."
My God.
Movies was our common ground. And he was an incredible movie buff and loved everything, showed me everything. I grew up mostly in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and there was a giant storm because there was always a giant storm.
You were born in New York City.
I was.
But you moved to Fort Lauderdale.
We
Why?
moved a lot. We first moved to Albany, then we moved to Hollywood, Florida. Then we lived in Los Angeles for one magical year that always made me want to return here. In 6th grade, we moved back to Florida, and 7th grade, we lived in Hollywood, Florida again, but on the crummy side of the neighborhood. And then...
My brother's down in Plantation Lakes.
Well, so I went to high school in Plantation. I skipped 8th grade.
That's where my niece goes.
I went to university school.
Wait a minute. So this is crazy.
Yeah.
Again, Jewish geography.
Exactly. He was both in the garment business, but the kind of...
Schmata business.
He was in the schmata business, but also he was, and some of this stuff factored into Out of Sight, because Scott Frank also would get some information from him. He was the biggest bookmaker on the East Coast, and that's why we moved a lot. And I had this kind of Damon Runyon-esque childhood where he'd say...
He's a gambler.
No, he would say that he was not a gambler because he was a bookie. And he invented the half-point spread, which changed modern sports betting. And when I was in graduate school at Stark, my parents had moved to California because my dad also always loved it, and he was arrested. And so the first 3 years of my career after I finished grad school was kind of fibbing to Linda and Deborah because I left a little bit early to go visit him. So I learned how to smuggle in a corned beef sandwich from Nate Nell's into prison.
Where? Which prison?
First, Terminal Island, which was a tough place to be as, a 62-year-old man. And then his case was eventually thrown out and reversed, and he finished up in the prison camp in Lompoc.
How'd you feel about that?
It was tough. I mean, I didn't used to talk about it
Embarrassing?
freely. Yeah, I kept it a secret. And there was one day when his first appeal had been thrown out. We were still on the Paramount lot, so I guess I was still in my first year and a half of working. And Linda was being particularly tough that day. And I just started crying. And of course, she no crying in baseball kind of a boss. And I said, look, it's not about work. And I told her. I asked her not to say anything to anyone. I later found out that she had told Deborah, and Deborah was such a class act that she kept it to herself and never told me until he got out of prison. And then I told her.
Wow.
So
I'm so sorry you had to go through that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry he had to go through it.
Can I tell you something? I'm so happy you shared that, because how could that not inform the stories you tell, the things that you want to bring to the screen, that has to be a major influence on you.
It definitely was. It definitely impacted causes I got involved in, things I got involved in, looking at people through a different lens. And I would say that it also really informed how I never really got too caught up in the Hollywoodness of it, because I also went through a situation where people I was very close with and close with our family kind of turned their back on us.
Wow.
And believed things that they read, because it's a crazy case and it's for another story.
But I got to tell you something. I hear a little bird told me that you're going to be writing a memoir. Listen, you heard it from me as a directive. You have to write this. I want to read it. I will be the first
thank
purchase.
You, Kevin.
But also, you're getting emotional as you talk about it. I can tell, not geschrying, but it fills you.
Yeah. Again, later, it became a source for Scott Frank to ask questions about Ripley's commissary account and how you deposited money and how somebody would survive in jail.
How did you get that movie made, Get Shorty?
Well, Get Shorty was interesting. Get Shorty was first, and that was the second. But what happened was, obviously, Danny DeVito and Barry Sonnenfeld were close. Barry was the cinematographer on Throw Mama from the Train. And of course, went on to become this great filmmaker and one of the funniest human beings and a delight. And he called Danny up, and we will get to how much he hates to fly, Barry Sonnenfeld. And we will talk about the fact that it was actually going to San Jose on the test screening of Get Shorty, where he said, I'm only taking solace in the fact that if I die, you'll die too, to Joe Farrell. And I was there.
That was my boss. And I brought it up, I think it was on the Basil Iwanek episode.
Exactly. And I said, that wasn't Basil's movie. I was on that plane. But weirdly, Barry had, and I think it's in his fantastic memoir, there was like an emergency landing at one of those test screenings that Barry went through. He was beside himself.
Beside himself, yeah.
So Barry called Danny. He had a flight that was delayed, and he bought the book. It was already in paperback. And he said, I read this book. It was great. Read it, Danny. I think it could be great for us to do together. And a week later.
Was it a popular book? Or?
It was. I mean, it was an Elmore Leonard novel. So Dutch
But was
always
Elmore Leonard?
Yes.
Do you follow
Elmore
what I mean?
Leonard was Elmore Leonard.
Because I think you helped make Elmore Leonard bigger than he ever was.
We did, because we had the first really successful film adaptation. But there'd been others that hadn't worked. Freaky Deaky had come out, 52 Pickup. I actually always had a soft spot for.
But that's my point.
Right. But Get Shorty was the first one that really transcended. But it's not like anybody was dying to make it. So a week later, Barry calls Danny and says, did you read the book? And Danny says, I bought it. And Barry said, but did you read it? And he goes, no, Barry, we bought it. We acquired the rights to it. Jersey did. And so we began the process of developing it. We talked to a lot of people, great writers. And I had first asked Scott Frank, who's my oldest friend in the business. I met him the year that I started working for Deborah and Linda, and we've been friends ever since. And we'd never worked together. We were just close friends. But I knew how much he loved Elmore's work because he didn't know him at that point. But Scott Frank has always backed up 3 movies, 3 writing jobs, 3 everything.
Pretty extraordinary.
He's
talent.
The best.
Yeah.
And I said, look, I'm coming back to you again. I'm sending you the book, because he weirdly hadn't read it, and he'd read every one of Dutch's books. And he was getting on a red-eye flight to New York. I'm pretty sure I'm remembering this accurately, because we all turn our stories into better stories in hindsight. And I said, just take the book on the flight. And my phone rang at 6:30 in the morning when he landed, and I answered the phone, and I just heard, fuck you. And it was because he had to do it. And it was going to blow up his life. He was late turning in The Lookout. He was late turning in Men in Black. Or no, Barry was late doing Men in Black. And they tried to talk him out of doing Get Shorty before he did Men in Black. And it was one of the 3 movies that TriStar chose not to make of ours at Jersey, which
Who was running? Was it Mike there then?
Yeah. Reality Bites, Get Shorty, and Pulp Fiction were the 3 movies that they famously passed on. Mike Marcus, who you also had on the pod, was running MGM at the time. And he's the person who picked up Get Shorty and Turnaround.
And I just want to say, Mike Medavoy, who's also been a guest on the show, said one of his big regrets was passing on Pulp Fiction.
He says that now, but for a long time he said he had no regrets about it. And he had been meeting with Congress people who are always blaming things on violence.
That's right. Well, I would have to say you are a visionary. You saw what that movie could be. I would have probably passed on it too if I didn't understand it.
I don't know if you would have because it was great on the page, but I'll go back. So one of the things that Linda Obst had me do, there are 3 things that I really, really have to credit her with. One, when I did coverage, which was short coverage, and sometimes I would read 30 scripts a weekend because that's how much spec material was out there then.
How do you read 30 scripts a weekend?
My daughter says the same thing to me because she's interning for A24 now, and she says I don't believe it. I would just, again, my father was in jail. I was living at home taking care of my mom.
But there's not enough hours in a day.
There are. I would start after work on Friday.
Would you stop after a certain number of pages?
No. If it was really terrible, I would sometimes read the first 30 and the last 30. Mm-hmm. But I had a hard time doing that. And the weird thing is we developed in my first year a script that Darren Star wrote, and it was the middle 30 that made me realize that it could be a movie. But the great thing she would make me do was, what's the best version of this movie? And it was a mental test. And it was, who would direct it? Who could star in it? What's it like? What's the genre? What's the shape of it? And that rigor, I think, has served me to today. That was one thing. In addition to all of the truly horrible scripts I would read, she would give me what she considered the best scripts, produced or unproduced, so that I could also develop my taste in things that I loved. So I had Linda, I had Deborah, who was there is no above or below the line. We're one crew moving our day forward.
And a galvanizer.
Yeah, and non-hierarchical and completely involved in every part and there to support the filmmaker. So I had that. And who understood.
That's what made them really good partners, probably, right?
And she understood every job on the set because she started as a script supervisor on the TV show The Streets of San Francisco. Plus, Lindsay Duran was a studio executive who we developed with when we were at Paramount.
She's so good with story, it's unbelievable.
I still quote the famous Lindsay Duran that I always remember is, there's a fine line between intriguing and confusing the audience.
I call them good confusions versus bad confusions.
Exactly.
And good confusions are good.
Yeah.
I mean, they keep you on the edge of your seat.
That's what she would call intrigue.
I love that. I actually like that better. I may change my verbiage.
You can credit her. Okay, so the other thing Linda taught me was I would look at, in Variety and The Hollywood Reporter, there used to be these columns that were called Filming in the Future in the U.S. or Filming in the Future Outside the U.S. And they were really there for crew members to figure out and for below-the-line agents to try and get crew on. I would read them and kind of scour if there was really good cast and I had never heard of the writer or the director, I would get the script.
I can't even believe how genius that is, because what you're saying is if it attracted that level of talent, then there's got to be something there with the creative DNA.
Right. That's right. And so Reservoir Dogs was one of those scripts.
Who taught you that?
Linda taught me that.
I'm sorry. It's genius. Sorry. Keep going.
So that's how I first read the script of Reservoir Dogs. And the thing that I'd really learned from that is that the indie film division or the talent agents often see the most gifted new voices because you need the foreign sales component and actors to get it. And Quentin was signed originally by Lee Stolman, who's a manager now. Lee was an assistant for Matt Dillon's agent, and he read it first. And I believe he then gave it to Mike Simpson, and they represented him together. When I read it, I was trying to meet him. He famously has never had a phone besides a landline. And my friend Chris Brancato, who's now a very big showrunner, and who's from New Jersey, and I think is in the Bergen County Hall of Fame. He's the creator of Godfather of Harlem and Narcos, and you should have him on sometime, but he's back east. But he was an aspiring screenwriter and was a good friend of mine, and Lawrence Bender was his roommate. And we were at the premiere of Terminator 2. I was talking to Callie Corey and Harvey Keitel. They had just finished shooting Thelma and Louise. It hadn't come out yet, and we were with Chris. And a guy starts to walk up, and Chris Brancato says to me, and he knew I wanted to meet Quentin, and it had been going on for a month. And again, like the agents couldn't reach him, so they'd say he wasn't available for a meeting because he didn't have a phone. And Chris said, Stacey, I'm about to make your night meet Quentin Tarantino. And so we met. First, we brought him in for a meeting to talk about adapting, I think it was a Don Winslow novel. And he said, I'm hoping that my movie works out well enough that I don't have to do an adaptation of somebody else's work and I can just write originals. And we began the process of making a blind deal for him to write his second movie before he directed a frame of film of Reservoir Dogs. And I helped him get the music clearance for Stuck in the Middle with You because he had originally been turned down. So,
my God, we're going to take a break now. When we come back, we're going to talk to Stacey Sher about so many other movies and where she is and what she's working on today. We'll be back in a moment.
If you're curious about how movies actually turn a profit, I've got something for you. My upcoming book, How to Score in Hollywood, dives into the intersection of creative instinct and audience insight and where the business of film meets the art of storytelling. The book is available for pre-order now on your favorite bookseller platform. I'm also putting together a book launch team, and I'd love for you to be a part of it. We're looking for people to help spread the word ahead of our November release and also to leave a short book review after its release. In exchange, you'll get early access to the book, exclusive behind-the-scenes content, and more. Sign up to join my launch team or for book updates at kevingets360.com. And as always, thank you for your support.
We are back with the visionary Stacey Sher. Stacey, I can't even fathom where to go with this interview because there's so many things to talk about. I do want to ask you how you got into the business specifically. And before I do that, can you tell me 3 of the movies that most influenced you as a kid that informed you as you entered the film business?
Number 1 and number 2, Clockwork Orange and Raging Bull. I always joke that my family was not the family that went to the family film on Friday night. We went to Raging Bull together. And Clockwork Orange, I watched on whatever the pre-HBO on the East Coast was. It had a different name in California, but I inappropriately watched Clockwork Orange probably like 10 times.
What was it about that intrigued you so much?
I was fascinated and became like a huge Kubrick fan to see this exploration of free will versus determinism and taking the most loathsome character in Malcolm McDowell and seeing you root for him to have free will again after it had been taken away from him. And that it was so emotional. I always think it's a movie that goes all the way around. It's so cold, it becomes warm.
Oh, that's so deep. Did you ever meet Kubrick?
No, I wish I would have.
Oh, man. Because that would have been like that intro you had to Quentin.
Yeah. And in fact, when I was helping Quentin get the license for Stuck in the Middle with You, my analogy to this wonderful woman that I became close with during the Fisher King because she was the music publisher for this standard called How About You that Robin Williams sings in the movie a bunch of times. But Terry Gilliam had told me it was only going to be in 3 times, and it ended up probably being in the movie 10 times. So I had to keep going back to the publisher who I was very close with.
Additional,
you pay more for each usage. It's called a visual vocal when the character sings along with it. It's either a background vocal when it's playing in the background or a visual vocal if somebody sings along with it. And Robin sang I Like New York in June, How About You many times, many more times than we originally wrote the license for. So I became quite friendly.
How about a Gershwin tune?
Exactly. How About You? And I became quite friendly with Pat Lucas, and EMI Publishing, where she worked, controlled the publishing rights to Stuck in the Middle with You. And Steelers Wheels had originally turned Quentin down. And I wrote a letter that Karen Rackman, our music supervisor, sent, or the music supervisor I worked with that I then introduced to Quentin, and Mary Ramos, his current music supervisor, trained with Karen originally. Karen took this letter that I wrote that said that it was analogous to Kubrick's use of Singing in the Rain in Clockwork Orange. And I said that I felt that this was the birth of a major new cinematic talent and voice, and it wouldn't diminish their song to be used in that way.
Because your tastes are so eclectic, you've probably had some challenges getting movies made. Give me the one that was the most difficult to get to the screen?
I've never really had super easy ones.
I thought you were going to say I've never really had that many challenging ones. It's the greatest answer ever that you gave. I never really had super easy ones.
Let's face it, movies are effing hard to get made.
And because of the kinds of filmmaker films that we loved making at Jersey, the wind was never really at our backs. It was often in our face. And we never could really build. I would say one of the easier ones, Out of Sight, was easier than Get Shorty, which took many, many years. And we sold the book right away. But we were and I think this is interesting in terms of how the business has changed. Jersey Films had a thing called a discretionary fund. And it was a development fund to acquire things.
Who funded Jersey Films?
In the beginning, it was TriStar. We moved to Columbia for the end of it. And then we moved to Universal before the company disbanded. And we had a discretionary fund the whole way through. We made our blind deal with Quentin in our discretionary fund. We paid for the life rights and the drafts of Erin Brockovich through the discretionary fund. We made a tiny little movie called Camp that we produced with Killer Films that we...
Oh my God, I love that
We
film.
paid for the music and the staging through the discretionary fund. We paid for the script of How High through our discretionary fund. We prepped Garden State out of our discretionary fund.
It truly was a discretionary fund.
We paid for the life rights for the World Trade Center survivors, which was the last movie Deborah was credited on when she was still alive. She passed away right when the movie came out.
How did you get to Jersey Films?
Randomly, a headhunter who was married to Fred Spector, Pamela
Robinson, right?
That's right. Mm-hmm. Fred's ex-wife, fabulous woman, was a headhunter who had been hired by Danny and Michael. Fred put Danny and Michael Schamberg together, and I was the first person they hired. Deborah and Linda split up. I worked for Linda for a little while, but I left while Fisher King was in post, and that was one of my first associate producer credits. And I had been approached by Jane Rosenthal and De Niro, but I didn't want to move to New York because at that point, very much the film business center was Los Angeles. And I had a friend who was dating Warren Beatty, and I was so nervous that I was leaving my job and for Linda to find out that I was having conversations about whether I should move to New York.
Forget it.
And Warren Beatty asked me a question that changed the way I thought about movies forever. And I was 26 years old. We were in post on the Fisher King. And he asked, what kind of movies do you want to make? And I was so nervous. I was sitting here with Warren Beatty. And I said, I want to make various movies. And he said, do you want to have various children or marry various men? Because that's the same commitment you need to have to the movies that you make.
Wow, what a thing.
So that changed it for me. And that was going to Jersey.
And you went to Jersey.
When Pulp Fiction came out, I became Danny and Michael's partner.
And then when did it disband?
Right around the time we were making Along Came Polly.
So it was in business for what, 15 years or something?
12.
Ah. Well, where did you go after that?
Michael and I stayed working together. I had 2 little kids at that point, and we worked together for another 10 years. And then...
You were work husband and wife.
Yeah, we worked together.
But you do have a husband.
I do have a husband.
Producer?
Yeah, and I heard Basil talking about his bookstore. We have a record store.
Where's your record store?
On Ventura Boulevard, next to Arts Deli.
I'll be there at lunch today.
Well, there you go.
At Arts Deli, not the record store, but I'll be in. I know that record store. It's the best ever.
It's great.
That's your record store?
That is my husband's record store.
What's his name?
Kerry Brown.
How
And he
fantastic.
presses vinyl, and he has a vinyl pressing plant in Miami and one vinyl press here in LA.
I love it. It's so making a comeback.
And as an engineer, he's a Cinema Audio Society winner for mixing live concert Smashing Pumpkins film. Yeah.
Okay, that's a whole nother area to go into. Let me stick with getting into the business. You went to a couple of colleges before you kind of got somebody that gave you the advice to move into the movie business, or inspired you, I should say?
Well, I'll tell you what happened. I wanted to go into sports broadcasting, and I had a summer internship. I transferred to Maryland. I started college when I was 16, and so my parents made me go to Miami because it was only 20 minutes from our house. And they didn't want me to be further away from home, which I thought was insane.
Probably a lot cheaper, too.
No, it's a private school. If I went to Florida, it would have been cheaper, but not going to Miami. But I then transferred to Maryland because I had a lot of friends there. And it was really divine intervention. After I had this internship and realized the world of sports was just way too sexist, I joke that I pivoted to the really inclusive world of film and television. But I had a professor, a film historian, and I was taking an elective in film, and his name was Douglas Gomery. He wrote books about sound. He had been at Wisconsin. He said, there's a new program. It's only a couple of years old at USC, and you seem to really love film. And it's called the Peter Stark Motion Picture Producing Program. And I didn't even know what a producer was. It was pre-entertainment television.
What was your major?
Radio, TV, and film.
Got it. Why did he see you as a producer?
He just said, you really seem to love movies. I think you should apply. Wow. And they only took 25 students, they only took 4 undergrads. So we had a particularly prolific year. The undergrads that went when I went were Liz Glotzer, Neil Moritz, and Sharon Morrill. I think had come right from college also.
Wow.
And Art Murphy changed my life. USC changed my life. I knew no one in the business.
I've taught there a few times. That program, it's probably my favorite program to have taught at because they're so serious. The students are so serious. It's why I prefer always teaching graduate students.
It's the legacy of Art Murphy. Art Murphy changed my life.
And then you go to Linda and Deborah.
Yeah. So what happened was I had talked art because I had to work, and I worked all through college. Instead of changing to do a different internship, I had been working for a music video director named Marty Callner, who was a great guy. And I talked Art into letting me stay there. And I worked on all of these early Twisted Sister videos. So my big claim to fame at that point was that I found Niedermeyer from Animal House and talked him into flying People's Express Airlines to be in that Twisted Sister We're Not Going to Take It video.
For those people who don't know, People's Express was an airline that they actually had the credit card cart going down, like where they bring you drinks, and you paid. I always joke that if you didn't pay, they toss you out
the window. It made Southwest look like you were flying Delta One. Anyway, that's all we could afford on the video. But through that experience, I met a young aspiring screenwriter. And I think one of the significant things that I always tell students or younger people when I'm talking about the business is it's not always about networking up. It's getting to know your peers. David Simpkins was a below-the-line budget executive at a place called New World, which was acclaimed for making schlocky films like Angel, Hollywood honor student by day, Hollywood hooker by night, or Children of the Corn. Their classiest movie was a movie I actually love called Girls Just Want to Have Fun with Sarah Jessica Parker. And weirdly, they also owned Marvel at the time. But David was an aspiring writer. He had a script that he wanted to get to Twisted Sister, and that's how we were first introduced by a different intern. And we became friends. And he had this idea that he pitched me, which he called After Hours, the Martin Scorsese movie for kids. And that became Adventures in Babysitting. I was working for Deborah and Linda on a trial basis. I had met them through an executive. My second year of grad school, I worked for Gary Hendler, who was the head of TriStar. And it was another great formative experience because he resigned while I was the second assistant. And I kind of watched the impact of what it is from the seat of power to see somebody's phone sheet go from 2,000 calls a day to 2 calls a day.
Oh, my Lord.
And I really learned while I was still in school about situational power and that you're only as strong as your relationships and how you treat people. His strongest relationship was with Mike Ovitz. And so he had given all of his clients as a lawyer to Mike Ovitz in the founding of CAA. And that was Sidney Pollack, who...
Was there payback time now?
I think he was a producer afterwards, and I think people always took good care of him, and I think he thought about whether or not he really wanted to work because I think he retired a very wealthy man. The thing I remember is the one client he kept as a lawyer was Ella Fitzgerald because she was older. And so every once in a while I would get to talk to her on the phone. And both my parents are huge jazz fans and big band fans. So,
now I can say Jessica and Cy.
Yes, Jesse and Cy were big band fans. So That was great when Ella called once in a while.
What are 3 movies that you can name right off the cuff that you've made that hold a particular place in your heart? I didn't say favorites because
no. There are no.
As Warren taught you,
there are no favorites.
You have not a favorite child.
No favorite child. And I mean,
this is a personal question.
Pulp is obviously very special.
Yeah.
Out of Sight is very special. Reality Bites is very special. It's hard to narrow it down to 3. Man on the Moon, the Jim Carrey, Andy Kaufman movie.
Oh, that was incredible. I did that. Yeah.
Yeah. Where we learned that people didn't like Andy, whether he was alive or was 100%.
Not. 100%. It was DNA.
Yeah.
And what are you going to do? Not be authentic? I mean, you have to,
Yeah, that was quite an experience because Jim never broke character the whole time. He was either Andy or Tony. That must have been a joy. It was amazing, actually.
Really?
It was magical. And it's really special to me because I met my husband during that film.
I love that. Let me ask you a little speed round here. I'm going to mention a name to you and just sort of give me a first impression. I don't want you to think too much about it. You just sort of said Jim Carrey was magical. Okay? Steven Soderbergh.
The best on the planet. Love him. He's as kind as he is smart and talented. He has a saying, which is repeat business and treat people well. And his joke was that when we made Erin Brockovich, he was breaking what he called the Jersey jinx because we had made a lot of first films with people. So we made the second film, which was Erin with him. And then, of course, we made Contagion together as well.
I was going to ask you my next name, Erin Brockovich.
She's an extraordinary person who I'm still in touch with to this day.
My friend Randy is friends with her and speaks so highly
She's
of
the
her
greatest.
As a human.
She's the greatest.
Julia Roberts.
She's America's sweetheart.
George Clooney.
Fabulous.
What makes him fabulous?
Making Out of Sight was one of the great joys. Now, it was also different because it was before I had kids and your feelings are split. Once you have kids and once the business changed to become like this incentive-based business where you went places to shoot things instead of shooting in LA, a part of you is really torn apart if you have a family.
Bette Davis said you couldn't do them both.
I mean,
or Katharine Hepburn, I think, or whoever, but many of them. Was that a true statement?
Look, it's why I took the Activision job for 3 years because it was the age of my kids.
2015, I think, or something.
2016, yeah.
Yeah.
And right after Hateful Eight and the first season of Into the Badlands. And I'd just been on the road.
I cannot be on the road. I've got to be with my kids.
Yeah. I mean, during Hateful Eight, I left the morning after my son's bar mitzvah to go back to Telluride. You know, that's tough.
Oh, man.
That's tough. And shooting in Telluride is a place you can't fly home for the weekend. You know, in Django, I'd leave on a Friday night and be back on set by Monday morning. You can do that and never be away for more than 2 weeks and see them.
Mm-hmm. Right. And they're not sending the private jet.
No, definitely not.
Not on the budgets that you have to
No, definitely not.
Come in
you know,
at.
Even on Django, which was a large budget, I always felt like we were making the biggest low budget movie. But Out of Sight was really fun. George was really fun. George's practical jokes were really fun. Steven once got back at George. I remember while we were making that movie, he was named the sexiest man alive. And Steven had covers of the People magazine made for the whole entire crew. And when George showed up, the entire crew was wearing his Sexiest Man Alive cover. So it was a lot of fun.
Colleen Hoover.
She's a hoot.
Really?
I mean, she's delightful.
I got to meet her on It Ends With Us.
Exactly. She's so smart. She really understands her audience. She's obviously a great storyteller. And Michael Showalter, Colleen, her partner Lauren Levine, Jordana.
I was going to wait, but let's just talk about it now. Verity.
It's been a blast.
Verity is your next movie, I think,
It
right?
is. It is.
Can you just tell us a quickie about it?
It's an erotic thriller from the mind of Colleen Hoover that stars Anne Hathaway and Dakota Johnson and Josh Hartnett, directed by Michael Showalter.
I don't want to inflate his head too much, but I am such a fan of his.
Me too.
And he's a problem solver. Working with him on the screenings that I've worked on, he's been very complimentary of the contributions that I've made, but he listens to the audience.
Look, he comes from comedy. And when you come from comedy, the audience either laughs or they don't laugh. A joke kills or it doesn't kill. Ben Stiller, same thing. Loved working with him.
He's extraordinary. His instincts are second to none.
Reality Bites was his directorial debut. Did you work on Reality Bites?
I did not.
It was NRG.
It was the company I used to work at, NRG, yeah.
Yeah.
But Ben, I've worked on nearly every movie he's ever done since then. We have become friendly just through the business and the success he's had with Severance. Oh my God, I'm so happy for him.
Well-deserved. It doesn't surprise me at all. When we made Reality Bites, which was his directorial debut, his directing career got sidelined by him becoming a giant movie star, but I always saw him as a filmmaker.
He's one of the people that's embracive of the screening process. Why do you think that is?
Again, I think people that come from comedy want to hear the audience's feedback.
Excellent theory. I want to ask you about screening experiences that you've had. You've had some wild ones. Give me a couple examples of things that were. I mean, I know that you did Django Unchained. I believe it had been shot already. It was locked.
We were locked. We had marketing screenings because the studio was very worried about who this film would appeal to. Would it be...
Let's say the elephant in the room. African-American and Black audiences were going to think compared to everyone else.
Yes. So I'll tell you a funny story. The movie was very controversial in Black Hollywood, and I think that was really hard for Reggie Hudlin, who I produced the movie with, because he really always understood this was a superhero story. It was a fairy tale about rescuing a princess and a superhero story about literally and metaphorically blowing up the institution of slavery and looking at some very tough stuff in a way that made it possible for people to have a reckoning about America's racist past. So we have these screenings. One is, and you'll remember, they're all in New York. One is 50% white, 50% African-American. Then there's an all-white screening and an all-African-American screening. The movie played identical.
Listeners, when that happens, you know you have something so special. It was similar to Get Out, by the way. I just want to say the tactic that we used to uncover the marketing materials in that movie were just recruiting a Black audience to see if there were cultural cues that really spoke to that audience versus, say, a white audience, and were they different? And in fact, they were from a marketing standpoint, and both sort of met together, though.
They weren't on Django, though. And what I will say is then Harvey was nervous that we wouldn't play in the South and that white people were going to hate the movie. So in the middle of sending somebody down, we were going to screen in Athens, Georgia.
Right. I didn't do this movie.
So this was NRG. Mm-hmm. And you weren't there at the time. In the middle of the person being on the way with the print to Athens, Georgia, Harvey decided that that was too much of a college town and it wouldn't be the right sample. And literally, I feel like somewhere in rural Arkansas or Mississippi, it was like, for all intents and purposes, a Klan town. And the movie still tested the same and tested as high.
That's a great story. It was such a good movie.
Yeah, I'm really proud of it.
Thank you for those stories. A couple of other names I just wanted to run by you. John Travolta.
A gentleman, a sweetheart, and really generous with himself and with everyone that works with him.
Hilary Swank.
A fighter, fought to get Freedom Writers made, lover. Partnered with us the day after she won her second Oscar, and that's how we got that movie financed.
Like the day after.
Yeah. Said, I'm going to use the cachet I have now to help us get this movie made. And with my dear, dear friend, Richard
Like, was it literally the day after?
Yes.
That's beautiful. So she wins the Oscar. The day after, she says, I just got this attention. I want to use my new
power for good
to get Freedom Writers to the screen.
Yep.
And it got there.
And Richard LaGravenese is one of the greatest writers I've ever had the pleasure of working with.
I just had the good fortune to work with him recently. What a terrific
He's the best
guy, man. He was nervous about the process. And once he understood what we were doing, I think he really embraced it in a beautiful way. So I completely agree with that. Who do you want to work with that you haven't worked with?
Well, I'm very excited because I've been developing something with Cameron Crowe, who is one of my favorite people.
You know what he calls me?
What?
Coltrane. In my book. And he says, the way you work a focus group is
it's
like...
true.
Oh, well, that's very sweet, but
it is
I wasn't
true.
fishing.
There's nothing like watching you when we've said to you, Kevin, this is something we're curious about. Can you find out this? And the way you guide people and the humor that you use, there's a period of time where the focus group is really helpful. And then the power of personality of one member of the group, it's almost
could
like this,
take over.
Yeah, it's like the Stanford prison experiment. And you navigate it in the most adept and hilarious way. It'll be like, Johnny, we've heard enough from you already. Okay, your other friends want to get a word in edgewise here, and it's so great.
Hopefully not insulting them, but
no,
to
but in a
challenge them.
charming and adorable way.
Thank you, Stacey. Well, Stacey Sher, what can I say except it's been a joy working with you over these years. You have given us, our listeners, this industry, and the world some great entertainment, and you've made us laugh, you've made us cry, you've made us smile. And you've made a difference. And I thank you so much.
Thank you.
To our listeners, I hope you enjoyed our interview today. I encourage you to keep your eyes out for Stacey's upcoming film, Verity. For more filmmaking and audience testing stories, I invite you to check out my book, Audienceology, at Amazon or through my website at kevingetz360.com. You can also follow me on my social media. Next time on Don't Kill the Messenger, I'll welcome Mark and Troy Paul, co-founders of SGG Media, an award-winning social media marketing agency known for its unique partnerships with top studios and large-scale influencer activations. Until then, I'm Kevin Goetz, and to you, our listeners, I appreciate you being part of the movie-making process. Your opinions matter.